the last video, we talked about becoming the alchemist. We talked about this ritual in which, as alchemists, we transmute the flow of raw materials that we get from the AI into gold, into words that we can actually use. We then spent the rest of the video doing exactly this process to create some reusable assets, like this character sheet of our alchemist character, and this character sheet of the AI monolith. In retrospect, I can't help but wonder, was this really something that we needed? Whatever. Today we're doing another alchemy transmutation ritual, this time with the homepage text. For me, writing copy is one of the highest art forms, because it's like an art form where art and science meet. It's the art of carrying a stream of consciousness, of engaging with a person's emotions, of explaining your product with seductive clarity. It's not a matter of trying to manipulate people, but rather helping the right people understand how your product will change their lives. And for that reason, it's not enough to me to just use whatever the AI writes. After all, I've been writing copy for 20 years. I've written marketing funnels that millions of dollars have flowed through. And as of this moment, AI still has some catching up to do. So the first thing that I see that I want to change about this is that this headline, this is one that I actually wrote, it's powerful, it's vibey, but it doesn't actually explain what my product does. So I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to add a subheadline that's just as punchy and explains what's going on. It's going to say, with automation and plain language. Now I'm doing this process manually, but as I do this, I want to make note of what I'm doing, because if I think about the process that I'm doing to make this better, then I can give that process to AI at some point in the future. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to make use of this chat over here. I'm going to say, create a new doc in this workspace called Copy Editing Notes. As I edit, I'll tell you what I'm editing, and I want you to add to the notes doc. All right, so we're just having it keep some notes for me. However, from experience, I know that if I leave it here, the AI is going to add its 2 cents on everything, and it's going to turn even my notes file into a big hallucinated mess. So I'm going to give it an urgent directive. I'm actually going to write this in caps. And I said, do not add anything to my notes, only format and add them to the notes doc. Okay, it looks like I'm yelling at it. This isn't me being emotional towards the AI, but you might say that it's me trying to make the AI emotional. And I don't mean that literally, because AI doesn't actually have emotions, but it kind of simulates a human mind, and that simulation has simulated emotions, right? So by making the simulation feel this simulated sense of urgency, we're making it more likely that it's going to remember this. It feels like kind of a weird thing to say. In the many years that I've been writing Python, I never had to make my Python code feel a sense of urgency. But when we're programming machines with human language, the rules change. All right, so I'm going to give it its first note. And I'm saying headline, power, vibes, subheadline, clarity, value proposition. Now listen, I'm not saying that this is a general rule of copywriting. I'm just writing it down because this is what I did here. And this may end up being a useful template for something I use AI to write in the future. So I'll add that, and then I'll get back to work here. Oh my God. All right, so moving into this first piece of copy right here, we start out write the future into existence with AI. It's simple, it's powerful. We follow it up with automation in plain language. No, and I realize the grammar doesn't quite flow, so I'm going to add... There we go. All right, so then we move into the copy. So we move on to the copy, and it has this line right here that says, Eidolon gives you leverage that used to only belong to companies with engineers and some whatever. And I feel like if I'm reading this line makes my brain turn on. Like, not in a good way. Like, I have to think about this, right? Like, my brain is in a state of flow up until this part, and then I read this, and it's like, oh, what's going on? So I'm just going to delete this entirely because we don't need it. And now we're back to simple and clear with automation and plain language. No code, no nodes, no terminal, just the power to describe what should happen. All right, this is pretty okay, but I think if we just get rid of this right here and this right here, now it sounds more like a directive, like a verb. Just describe what should happen and watch AI make it real. There we go. Now this is starting to look like real copy. From that, I don't know that there's any notes I want to take, so let's just move on. All right, so in the next piece, we have this cliche line here. Most people are da-da-da-da. You're here to da-da-da-da. All right, and lines like this are interesting, right? Because it's not that this is an ineffective pattern to use. It's just that AI uses it every single time. So in my brain, whenever I see this, I immediately think, oh, AI wrote this. So it's just kind of funny, right? Because this is normally a pattern that actually works for writing effective copy, but it's just been so spammed by AI that it now raises a big red flag. All right, but there's a secret to dealing with AI cliches. It doesn't work every time, but it works here. All right, and here it is. You can literally just delete most of the cliche because the actual thing that matters is this part. All right, and this is something that I do want to add to my notes. So I'm telling it as part of a second pass, all right, and to be clear, you have to let it write, and then after the first draft is written, then you do a second pass. All right, look for cliches like most people blank, but you blank. Or this is by far the worst offender. It's not X, it's Y. This one takes on many forms like, that's not just blank, that's blank. All right, and once you find these, see if you can remove part of it to distill the important part of the line. And again, it won't work every time, but this time it did. All right, this line here, this is terrible. Right now, your output is capped by your hours. Every reply, every piece of content, every support ticket. That's one person doing one thing at a time. So it doesn't read well, but I'm actually not sure quite what to do with it just yet. Let's keep moving. The usual automation tools don't solve that. Well, I mean, yeah, they do. They just don't do it as well as Eidolon's does. Zapier breaks when workflows get complex. NAN expects technical setup. All right, this line is a little bit more useful because we can actually just delete this first sentence. And then for this line, we have, but they're built for engineers, not operators. All right, it's just kind of using this word operator as though this is something that's going to be understood by the reader. And we don't actually need this. Let's delete it. But also, you know, I'm not sure about this line. Like, I'm not really trying to pick a fight with coding agents here. In fact, we're going to have coding agents in Eidolons. We'll change this to terminal agents. And if you're unsure what this means, terminal agents, then, well, I guess this line is true. Eidolons is different. It gives you agentic power in plain language. So you can stop improvising one task at a time and start designing how work happens. That is a completely worthless line. Let's just get rid of that. All right, so back to this line. You know, part of the problem is that it has this whiplash premise here. So it's like talking about your output, and then all of a sudden it starts talking about Zapier. So I mean, we have to decide what this paragraph is really about in the first place. I think what I want to do is delete this line altogether, but I want to expand this line a little bit. So I'm going to say, Eidolons lets you automate entire systems, entire businesses in plain language. Yeah, this feels a little bit better to me. All right, and again, like as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the rules, right? Like how do I make this process reproducible so that AI can follow it in the future sometime? This thing that I just did, I don't actually know what the rule is. That's part of why I'm doing this video, because I want you guys to see what this process actually looks like. All right, so moving on, this is bigger than automation. Now, I don't necessarily love the fact that we just said Eidolons lets you automate entire systems, and then we say this is bigger than automation. So let's put a pin in that, and let's see what the premise of this paragraph is. Automation saves time. Eidolons changes what one person can cause. God, that's weird. Like, man, what a weird thing to say. Eidolons changes what one person can cause. You write a workflow in English. Okay, again, let's just fix this. You write a workflow in plain language, an agent follows it, a reply gets drafted, a video gets repurposed. Okay, so basically it's kind of given specific use cases here, which I feel like use cases are good, but I think there's probably a better way to present these. All right, then that's the real power here. You are not just completing tasks faster, you are writing the future into existence. And by the way, here's an example of this that I pointed out over here. It's not just blank, it's blank. You're not just blank, you're blank. But honestly, this entire paragraph here is fluff, so I'm just going to delete it without further consideration. All right, so this also kind of sucks. But this line here, you know, I like the premise. I like what it was trying to do. I just think it did it poorly. So let's see what happens if I just fix the language a little bit. So what it really meant is Eidolons changes what one person is capable of. I'm not sure why this wasn't obvious to the AI. Maybe it's because it doesn't want to end a sentence in a preposition or something like that, but whatever. All right, and this is actually another AI cliche pattern. We have the opposition here, which again, this can be an effective pattern, but like there's no reason to create opposition against automation. So this is just another case where I can just delete the entire line. It still reads just fine. In fact, it reads a little better now. All right, so digging into this paragraph here, God, it's just like it's trying so hard. You write a workflow in plain language, an agent follows it. It's like it's trying to tell a story or something. And I'm still not entirely sure what I want to replace this with. One thing I think about is this idea idea that I've seen marketed over and over again that AI is like having little employees working for you, but it's not like that. AI is far too incompetent to be considered an employee. It's more like the output of a single person increases exponentially. You know, maybe I'll start there. Multiplies and compounds your productivity exponentially. I'm still not in love with that, but it's better than it was. What I think's missing is that I need to substantiate this claim a little bit. So maybe I'll just add a little note to it and say substantiate this. Okay, so we'll come back to that later. Moving on, what if you only had to do the 10% that actually requires you? And again, man, here's that awkward wording, but that's okay because we can just replace this with one word. What if you only had to do the 10% that matters? I'm gonna add a line after this. I want that point to kind of sink in. 90% of your work can be automated with AI. The rest requires your heart, passion, and expertise. Work from a place of flow, allowing AI to do all the tedious work. I always said the word work twice. Let's make it chores. And the rest of this is trash. Okay, so this is starting to shape up a little bit. And granted, I'm only 1/10 of the way through this document. And right now it's really strong on vibes, but I think that from this copy as it is, it's not really clear what this does. So I think that's what I'm gonna work on next. But hopefully by now you're starting to see what this process really looks like. Effective writing with AI looks a lot like effective writing. It's time consuming and it's hard. All right, and not every communication has to be quite this intense. Because like I've said a couple of times now, the copy for this page is among the most important set of words that's going to be written for this company. Right now you might be wondering, if I'm going to be putting this much effort into it anyway, then is it even worth it to use AI in the first place? And I mean, that's up to you. If you can sit down and churn this stuff out, then for some people it might be faster just to write this from nothing. For me personally, it is a bit faster if you fix what it already created. And that takes us back to the alchemy process. You see, in alchemy, you start with raw materials, and the process goes, you break those raw materials down, dissolve them, and recombine them into something else. So that's what we're doing. We're taking the raw material that was given to us by the AI, we're breaking it down and rebuilding it into something that's nice. All right, and it took us a little while to get just these 5 paragraphs done. Just kidding, it's actually only 4 paragraphs. But what we have here now is truly a lot better than where we started. So that's it for today's ritual. Do me a favor, hit like and subscribe, leave me a comment, and I will see you next time.